We want to continue our series called One. What if it comes down to one simple thing? Isn't that interesting? You know, you go on YouTube to figure out, what is the key to doing this, right? I mean, I've taken apart doors of vehicles. I've taken apart all kinds of things, replaced and, alternators and starters and water pumps. And sometimes like, how do you get that thing out? It's just a re job that should take about 22 minutes, and I'm still here after an hour and a half. And then I go on YouTube. There are knowing glances. I see that. I see that smile. I see that elbow. And then I go on YouTube and I'm like, there was that locking thing, or there was that hidden bolt, there was that little lock release. I'm like, if only I'd known that one thing, I wouldn't have broke the entire steering column just to find that release thing to replace the ignition. I speak from experience. But what if it does come down to one simple thing? And in this case, it does. Jesus brought everything down to one simple thing, stated in 2 commands that kind of look like 3. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Sorry, the one that became 2. Love the Lord your God. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then Jesus came along and said, I've got a new command. And they're like, what? We already know about loving, because that's always been a thing. Loving God, love your neighbor. But that's an Old Testament thing. It's not a New Testament thing. Love God, love your neighbor. That was part of actually what Jewish people would say regularly, almost daily. They would recite some of this stuff that included love God, love your neighbor. But Jesus comes along and says, I've got a new command for you. Really, a new command? And he puts it this way. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples. If. What's the key? Jesus, what's the key? Is there just one thing? How will people know that we're Christians? How will people know that we follow you, Jesus? Is it we're going to wear long hair and sandals and a robe to look like Jesus? No. Is it that we will always have the right religious answer? No. Is it that we'll always have our theology correct? No. But actually, was not what Jesus said in this context. He said, there is one thing. And it's probably not what you think, disciples, because you've been confused about this. You keep thinking it's who's going to be greatest in the kingdom. Who's going to be first? Who's going to be this? Who's going to be last? Who's going to overthrow the Romans? Who's going to do this? I'm going to give you a new command. Yeah, you know about the loved one, but loving one another, how you treat one another, will indicate to other people that you've got it here and you've got it here. Okay? By this one thing, that you have love one for another. Love one another. And so here we have the supreme first mother command of all the other one another's. Love one another. And it overarches all of the other one another's. There are 50 plus one another's in the New Testament. You know that? And we'll go through some of them today. So the Apostle Paul put it this way. And specifically in how we apply the love one another command, one of the primary ways Paul said was this. And we read this, and read it earlier. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Now, he's not talking about swearing. He's not talking about potty talk. He's not talking about farm language or golf language. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Golf language. It's the kind of language you only use when you miss the ball or it goes in the pond or the lake. I know. But he's not talking about that. You know what he's talking about? He's talking about talking down about other people. He's talking about gossip. He's talking about speaking about other people in a way that would give other people the impression that somebody's not as great as they think they are. Only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Well, wait a minute now. So when I'm talking about my wife to someone else, I need to speak about her in a way that is helpful for building her up, but is also helpful for building you up and benefits you who are listening. Well, that's interesting. So it benefits the person you're speaking about whom you're speaking, and also the person with whom you are speaking. Build others up, benefit. So therefore, when we think about gossip or telling stories about other people, we can filter it through this. Is it helpful to them or the person I'm talking about? Does it benefit the person I'm talking about or to? Will it build them up or not? Now, preaching to myself here. I've told you before, I'm a man of many words. I'm also a boy of many words, a child of many words. And that gets me into a lot of trouble because Scripture says, more words, more trouble. Right? So the introverts, you get off the hook. The Bible gives you an easy pass, except Jesus says it's what you're thinking about, not just what you're saying. So you're busted too. King Solomon put it this way: the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? You could, wow, everything that the Bible can be said about our words is just summed up in a binary this or that. It's either life or it's death. You're either building up or you're tearing down. I'm either helping someone look better or helping them look worse, or make myself look worse in the process. It's the power of life and death. Sticks and stones can break my bones, and words can do even more damage. Isn't that the truth? We know this from experience. Kids' rhyme doesn't ring true. When parents told us, sticks and stones will break, words can never harm. No, that's just a mind over matter thing. The reality is the words hurt. Some of you remember the words that your dad or your mom or your uncle or your teacher said. Wow, you remember that? A negative example. Met with a guy a little bit younger than I was. He was at the time, he was about 35. And we were going through a book about Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. And we got to a part and he said, you know what I remember from my dad? By the way, this guy was a WHL hockey player. He made it into WHL just on the edge of that, just to start it, but then he pulled out of it just as he was going into the WHL. And when he got out of it, because he realized he was just doing it to make dad happy, playing hockey. He was playing hockey to make his dad happy. He wasn't having fun anymore. You know what his dad said to him? You're a quitter. You know what that son remembers his entire life? Of all of the things his dad said to him, whatever good he might have said, he remembers one thing, and it destroyed him. It was death to him. You're a quitter. Maybe you've experienced that. Somebody has spoken into your life, and you made a vow, I'll never do that again. I'll never tell my dad. I'll never quit, or I'll never start something because I might quit. And then my dad will just confirm what my dad said. Or you have become a quitter because your dad called you a quitter. Whatever it might be. But then, some of you remember somebody who spoke life to you. Do you remember that person? Nobody else believed in you. Nobody else thought you could make it. Nobody else thought you could be a basketball player, a hockey player, or make it in business on a farm, or whatever you were doing, and couldn't pass the test. You're probably not going to make it into the military. You're probably not going to get the job. You're probably going to get into that degree program. And somebody said to you, wow, with the way you work hard and the way you apply yourself, you're going to overcome. You're going to make it. You can do this. I really believe in you. You're going to do this. You're remembering. I hope you can remember the one person who said that one thing and spoke life into your spirit. And today you would say, yeah, because that person believed in me or encouraged me, I was able to do that. I was able to have the confidence to take the next step. The tongue has the power of life and death. So when it comes to love, we're either going to build others up, or point others up, or we're going to drag people down and point people down the wrong direction. So the scripture says in the New Testament, we need to build up. We need to point people to Jesus. But today we're going to talk about some tricky stuff. So today we're going to begin a mini-series within the big series of the One Another's that we're doing in May and June. There's a mini-series starting today on how we use our words to demonstrate love one another. So today we'll introduce it. And we'll talk about 3 ways to show love to one another with our attitudes and words. 3 ways to show love, and then 3 reasons it's really hard. Can I get a witness? Is it really hard to love one another? Yes. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thanks for that honesty. I'm a hard person to love, and some of you are probably hard people to love. And your spouse thinks so anyways, but they told me that. They told me to tell you. But there's 3 ways to show love with our attitudes and words, but we're also going to talk about 3 reasons why it's really hard to love. And you're going to go, when you hear those 3 reasons, you're going to go, that totally makes sense. Now I've got somebody else to blame. No, Actually not. Now you're going to say, this helps me understand why I'm struggling to show love with my words. And it may be a key to you overcoming something. So we're going to talk about 3 ways to show love. The first one is, and by the way, boring some terminology. I mean, the first word you're going to say, well, that's not really that rocket scientist amazing. But I get these 3 terms from a book by a guy named Rod Wilson. He's a Christian social worker, fundraiser out of Vancouver. And I was only introduced to this book about 3-4 weeks ago. And it has revolutionized my thinking on how we show love to one another with our words. And I think you're going to find it quite interesting as well. So the first way we show love to one another is by saying thank you. Saying, well, Dan, is this going to be a sermon series on manners? Because I've learned my manners. Okay, well, we'll see. You'll get to evaluate yourself in a minute. So saying thank you is a way of saying I love you. Think of the last person who said thank you to you, and you think, that was a really genuine thank you. They understood what I contributed to them, and they said, I recognize, I acknowledge the way that you impacted me, and I'm thanking you for that. Right? You made a difference in my life, and I want you to know that. And I'm saying thank you. That is a premier expression of love. It's a beautiful expression of love. A genuine thank you to someone acknowledges that they have impacted you. Colossians 3:15 just says, be thankful. There's some other great stuff in Colossians 3 that you can read on your own. But essentially, have a thankful spirit. Be a thankful person. Be a person with an attitude of gratitude. You know, there's a whole gratitude project, thankfulness project out there. It's existed for the last 20 years in North America. And one of the practices is to go to bed and think about 3 things for which you can be thankful. And it's just as not anecdotal. This is for real. This is science. You wake up the next morning in a way better frame of mind. This isn't just a Christian thing. By the way, this is a Christian thing. Jesus and God built it into us that gratitude will release all kinds of things within us, chemically even, so that we are better people when we're thankful. You wake up in the morning, at night, wow, God, thanks for sunshine. Thanks that we made it through. It took us till 11:30 to spray the crops last night, but we're thankful that part's done. We go on the next quarter second. We're thankful that we kidded X number of, how many kids you had. I mean, like kids. Some of you said 1 kid, others of you have many kids, right? Yeah. What? 300. Oh, 300 kids. Oh my goodness. So you can, at the end you can go, thanks God for healthy kids. Healthy sheep, healthy lambs, healthy calves. And then you can thank your spouse or your friend or a family member, hey, there were three things I want to thank you for over the last week. And then you go to bed. The next morning, you're like, wow, life is good. There's something that happens in you. Life's better when you choose to focus, fix your gaze, or Philippians 4 talks about, think on these things. So be thankful. Secondly, under this, thanking you shows that you love somebody because you've honored them above yourself. Interesting. It's honoring other people to say thank you to you because you contributed to me. See, if I don't want to honor you, then I won't acknowledge how you've impacted me in a positive way, and I won't thank you. See, it's all connected. And then 1 Peter, we're told, clothe yourselves with humility towards one another. You know, it's humbling to go to somebody and say, I just want you to know that I could not have done what just happened there without you having contributed. So you don't have to be an Academy Award winner or whatever. They get up, I just want to thank God, I want to thank my producer, my director, my mom, my dog, and it goes on, and pretty soon the exit music comes on. Okay, enough thank yous. But it's an acknowledgement that the accomplishment for which I'm being rewarded, I didn't do this alone. You impacted me, and you, and you, and you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's a way of acknowledging and humbly saying, no, I didn't do this all by myself. Right? We clothe ourselves with humility when we thank and honor one another through our thankfulness. It's a way of expressing our love for one another. 2, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wow. See, I'm sorry shows love for one another by acknowledging the way that I have negatively impacted you. If I come to you and say, I'm sorry, I acknowledge that what I did hurt you, what I did offended you, what I did actually caused somebody else to think poorly of you. I was wrong. I acknowledge the way that my behavior, my attitude, my words impacted you, and I am genuinely sorry. Now, somebody comes to you and says, thank you for something you did, acknowledges your impact, your impact on them. And somebody who says sorry to you because they have negatively impacted you, and they say sorry and genuinely want your forgiveness, would you say that person is expressing love to you? I'm not sure if we always connect that, but those are loving actions. If love is a verb, these are the things that love does. I acknowledge the way that I impact you, and I am sorry. Now, thank you is hard to say, believe it or not. I'm sorry is even more difficult to say, and we'll talk about that in a moment, so why that is. See, when we say I'm sorry, we're obeying James 5:16. Confess your sins or your faults to one another. Now, in our tradition, we're not a Catholic church. In a Catholic church, typically you would go at least, God willing, you would at least go once a week into a confession booth, and you would tell another human being, who in the Catholic church represents God to you, you would tell that human being, Father, I've sinned. You would confess your sin. You would confess your fault. Now, we're Protestant, so we don't do that, do we? Now, I'm self-mocking, and here's why. We threw out the baby with the bathwater, people. We said, well, we're Protestants. We don't tell anybody what we did wrong. I just tell Jesus, and I'm free. Yeah, you're forgiven, but you're not healed. See, if you steal from people, and you say, God, I'm sorry for stealing that. Yay, I'm free. Right? That's the Protestant way of doing it. You go to Jesus. You and Jesus. You work it out. That's not obeying James 5:16. He doesn't say go to the priest. He says go to another human being who is also the body of Christ and who is a trophy of God's grace and also needs forgiveness. Be vulnerable enough to say, I was wrong. You know why? Because when you tell the person you stole from, I'm sorry, I stole from you. Do you think you're going to stop stealing from that person? I can think of 2 reasons why you're never going to steal from that person again. Number 1, they know you stole from them. And number 2, you know they know you stole from them. And you told them. The chances of you ever stealing from them go down significantly through confession. In other words, if you want to be forgiven, tell God about it. Do you want to be healed? Then tell someone else about it. It's a 2-part deal, and Protestants have thrown out James 5:16 in revolution or some kind of a reaction to Catholicism. It ain't right, just saying. The practice of saying I'm sorry to one another has got to increase among God's people, or we will not experience healing. We will not experience restoration. We will not be loving one another. Colossians 3:9 says, do not lie to one another. By the way, the command is do not bear false witness in the 10 Commandments. Not bearing false witness is not just not lying. It's don't give people the impression that something different has happened. I didn't lie. No. You bore false witness. That's one of the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments doesn't say don't lie to each other. It doesn't even say that. It says it here. The 10 Commandments says don't bear false witness. Don't give people the impression that something's different than real, than the actual. See, when I tell you my stories, I want you to think better of me than I am. Don't you? Don't you want other people to think better of you than you know you really are? So that's why we put on makeup. That's why I dress up on Sunday, because I want you to see the best version of me, and even better than is true. So why would I tell you the real deal about me? Why would I say I'm sorry? I'm going to bear false witness. Now, no offense to makeup wearers. And I would prefer that all of us wear nice clothes on Sunday. Your Sunday jeans, not your school jeans, and not your chore jeans, right? There's 3 categories of jeans, right? So wear your Sunday jeans here. That's awesome. But let's not pretend that we're better than we are. Let's be honest with one another. We're not going to bear false witness. We're going to confess. This is called transparency. This is called disclosure. This is called risk. In other words, don't lie to each other. Don't bear false witness. Don't pretend that you haven't offended other people. Be honest and say, I have negatively impacted you, and I am genuinely sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm willing to make amends and willing to change. I'm even willing to pay back what I stole. I was wrong. Speak the truth in love. Part of this has to do with telling somebody else what you really did. And then Ephesians 5 and 1 Peter says, submit to one another. Wow. Is it humbling to say I'm sorry, to admit what you did was wrong? Yeah. Is it honest? Yes. Is it transparent? Yes. Is it truthful? Yes. And does it involve submission and humility? Oh, yes. It's hard. Third, the way that we show one another that we love one another is by saying to one another, tell me more. Tell me more. Telling me more says to someone that you acknowledge the way we impact each other, and therefore I need to hear your story. See, I want to tell you my story. I'll give you a negative. This, by the way, is the hardest one for me. Can I just confess that? This is the I'm sorry part. I'm sorry. I'm telling you that this is my flaw, my personal hardest one of these 3. It's okay to have a hardest one and say, hey, I'm pretty good at thank you, but I never say I'm sorry. Okay, I'm telling you, I'm pretty good with thank you and pretty good with I'm sorry, and I've had to say sorry, even people in this congregation, just since I've been here in a few months. But this is the bigger one for me. So yesterday, Ann and I were with the library she was volunteering, a couple of other volunteers there, and so one of the other volunteers was telling us a story about something around just the house, the trees, taking down trees or something. And when she was partly done her story, I made sure she heard my story, because I have trees in my yard, and I have a chainsaw too. So I told her some of my story. Oh, and then she told me some of her story. Oh, and then I upped it one and told, oh, well, that's nothing. My trees are even bigger than yours. And I had a wind topped off of one of my, and then she told me something. And then I also, at our place wow, pathetic. You ever catch yourself doing that? See, asking someone else, say, really? Wow, that sounds tough. Tell me more. And then the person says, yeah, but we had to take down X number of trees, and then one fell in our shed. Really? Oh, wow. Yeah, what else? Well, then we had this happen, and really? Oh, that must have been tough. Wow, was that expensive? Or, hey, who'd you call to help you with that? Oh, we called this guy who cuts down trees, and he did it safely, and, oh, really? Hey, do you have his number? Because that might be something helpful for me. Yeah, I know, he was really good. Oh, really? What did you like about him? Well, he came on time, he did it right away, and he finished the job, and good price. Oh, really? Oh, I definitely need his phone number. You see, I'm modeling for you what I did not do. Do as I say, not as I do. That's what I wish I'd done. Do you ever have that? Oh, that's what I wish I'd said. I wish I'd asked you to tell me more. I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that. I'm great after the fact. My eyesight is amazing looking backwards. 2020. But we acknowledge that we impact each other by saying, tell me your story. So, for instance, let's just look back a bit in 2020. COVID, mandates, masking. Somebody comes up and he says, yeah, well, I think you should, and they should, and, well, I think they shouldn't, and they should, and, it just goes on and on. And then in the middle of the conversation, if somebody's really angry with you, whatever your view is, I don't even care. And whatever the opposing view is, I don't care. Have you ever stopped to think, why is that person so angry? And you might say to that person, wow, help me understand. You mentioned something about this, and oh yeah, well the government's just trying to, or the police are just trying to, or these people are just trying to, or the truckers are just trying to. Oh really? Oh, do you have somebody in your family who is a trucker, or who is a police member, or do you have a person who's been impacted by supply chain issues? Or oh really? Tell me, how has that impacted you? How has it impacted you? Oh well, it's like this and this and this. Oh okay. Now, as I'm describing this, you're thinking, oh, you're just letting a loudmouth keep talking. You're just baiting them. No, if you genuinely care about them, wouldn't you want to hear why they're so angry? And then eventually, you know what you find out? Well, I lost a loved one because of this, or because of that, or I've been impacted. I lost my job because. So I asked that the other day. Oh, really? Like, what's the deal about? Like, help me understand why you're so concerned about the mandates and this and that. And I just wanted to hear the story. And well, yeah, I lost my job, and my wife lost her job over this issue. I said, really? Wow, that must have impacted. So, hey, I did one good thing. I asked him to tell me more. Right? I'm learning. The point is, you can find out a lot about a person's hurts. So when they're angry, they probably are hurt. And if they're hurting other people around them, they're probably hurt. Because hurt people, and hurting people hurt people. So if you can ask them, really? Wow, tell me more. I'm not sure, that's not really my background. Like I've said to farmers, I said, hey, I'm not really an agricultural person, but can you help me understand agriculture a bit? Like what's it like? And he says, well, yeah, you gotta do this and that. Oh, really? Oh, and then what? Well, you gotta do it in this order, and then you gotta do that. Oh, okay. And what else? So this is how I learn. This is how I learn about things, by asking people to tell me more. So it's a way of acknowledging that we all have a story, and it's important that we hear each other's story. Let's move on. So Philippians 2:4 says, we've been through this passage, we studied Philippians here together. Look to the interests of one another. So Paul says, like Jesus, who was more interested in us than himself, more interested in serving than being served, he was interested in the interests of others. Look to the interests of others. That's what Tell Me More says. I'm more interested in your story. I'm more interested in hearing your story than me telling you my story. Secondly, show hospitality to one another. You know, when you say, tell me more, you're acting as a host of a conversation. There's a host and a guest in most conversations. In a healthy conversation, you trade. I'll be a host for a while, you're the guest in the conversation, right? I ask you questions, you tell me. And by the way, a healthy person will eventually say back to you, oh, but I've been talking about myself. Tell me about you. And you think, wow, that feels really nice. I've been asking them and trying to be the host and trying to keep my mouth shut. But now they've turned it around after a few minutes and they want to hear from me. This is called a conversation. It's called dialogue. It's when you ask and listen, and then you wait to be asked, and then you share something when you're asked. That's called dialogue. It's what we don't have in North America for the last 2 years. Just saying, it's what is missing, because we don't know how to show love to one another. Tell me more says, help me understand. I don't have all the answers. And by the way, my opinion could be wrong because it's not as informed as yours. So why don't you share with me how you understand it, and it's going to add some data to my understanding, and I'm going to change my mind maybe, or I'm not, but I'm at least understand where you're coming from. So now I won't hate you. I'll disagree with you, but at least I'll care about you as a person of the pain that you've gone through. Show hospitality, be a host in a conversation. Accept one another. We don't have to fix everyone. We don't have to change everyone. We can just listen. Serve one another by listening, by caring, by asking somebody their story. Well, let's talk about 3 reasons why we struggle to show love to one another. 3 reasons why it's hard to show love with our attitudes and words in the ways we've just described. 3 reasons. Excuses, maybe, but reasons. They explain a lot. First one, our culture is influencing us toward 3 things. Number 1 is entitlement. Entitlement says, I deserve what I'm given, so I'm not grateful. Now, we have a baby in the room, and that baby gets to decide when they get what? And that child's parents obey him. Oh, got some pushback over there. Pushback. But guess what happens? Baby goes, wah, and you think, oh, food, diaper change, or, oh, sorry, hold me, right? There's kind of three things, right? Or tired, sorry, four things. Tired, hold me, eat, poop. Those are the four things, basically. Change me. Yes, son. Change the diaper. I'm happy now. You obeyed me. Great. I'm hungry. Wah. I'm happy. Yay, I obeyed you. Now I'm happy. Now, we would all say, now, I have a question for everyone. It's a trick question. Is a baby entitled to all of that? Yes. A baby is entitled to that. As a matter of fact, it's against not only social rules, but the law to neglect the care of a child in your care. Not hold, to not change the diaper, to not feed, to not allow it to have rest. I know the child is tormenting you with an inability to sleep. Sorry, parents. I feel your pain sometimes when I've had my grandkids over. But they're entitled, and that's because they're helpless. They are vulnerable, so they are entitled. I want you to imagine a 1.5 to 2-year-old saying to mommy and daddy after a diaper change, "Good job, Mom. That was a good change. Thank you. Oh, and hey, last night, Dad, I'm sorry for waking up in the middle of the night. That was insensitive of me. I know you got to go to work the next day. You haven't had sleep. I kept you up. I've impacted you, and I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry." And then, hey, parents, I know what it's like on this side of me as a baby. I don't know how hard it is growing up, but I don't know. What's it like to be on the other side of me? Can you tell me more? Yeah, you keep us up all night. We're going through diapers. The average baby goes through 6,000 diapers before they're diaper trained. That's just the girls. The guys is like 13,000 or something. No, it's around 6,000. But anyways, but a baby, you would never expect that of a baby. Thank you, I'm sorry, or tell me more. The problem is when we grow up and continue to live an entitled life and expect everyone to give us things and what we have we deserve, so we're not grateful. That's the problem. See, mature people stop expecting what shouldn't just come to you naturally, or at least thank people for what comes to them. Okay? So entitlement says, I deserve what I'm given, so I'm not grateful. Well, wait a minute, Pastor. You mean you're not supposed to thank my spouse for making a meal? Yeah, every meal. You mean when my husband vacuums, I'm supposed to thank him for doing a chore? Why not? Didn't kill anybody to say thank you to your spouse, whoever the spouse is. Probably Leroy. You're the guy who cooks, so you better say thank you to your husband for all the cooking he does. You better thank her for, I'm sure she does something around the house. By the way, I just want to tell you, I want to tell my wife, she never thanks me for making meals. Because I don't make any. So I'm sorry I don't make any. I guess I'm a little entitled. I got to deal with that. But it doesn't hurt to say thanks, does it? But we feel entitled. So as we grow up, we learn that no, we're no longer entitled. But our culture has bred into us, right? So ever since somebody sued McDonald's because they went through the drive-thru, they put the cup between their knees while driving and took the lid off to put cream and sugar in and stir it. No kidding. And it burned their thighs. Really? You're kidding. If you were that person, I'm sorry, I just have no sympathy for you. But they sued and won. McDonald's was 80% responsible for burning that person's thighs because they took the lid off, stirred the coffee, and it was too hot to do that, and probably driving distracted, probably on the highway, stirring, who knows what. And 80% responsible McDonald's and 20% responsible the driver. So ever since that court case in North America, particularly the States, we are now entitled to believe that we are not responsible for our actions. There was a joke about somebody in a motorhome and they went to the back to make coffee because it had cruise control So why couldn't I go back and make coffee while we're driving and then come back to the steering wheel and wonder why it went into the ditch? I don't know if it's a joke or for real, but it's that kind of mentality where it's somebody else doing it. My parent, my dad, my teacher, my this, my that. Now, we can be hurt by other people, but to believe that we deserve everything we're getting and everybody else, it's their fault, that's called entitlement. So back to Colossians 3:15 says, as members of one body, you are called to peace. There's the rest of it. Be thankful. Entitlement says, I'm not grateful. A healthy perspective, a loving perspective says, I'm thankful and I honor you above myself. You contributed to me. Second, our culture influences us towards victimization. I've talked about that. Sorry, I leaped into the second point. Victimization is not my fault, so I lack remorse for my role. I lack remorse for my role because I'm a victim. Now, we can be victimized, yes? Somebody punches you in your face for no reason, you were a victim of an assault, okay? Even if it was somewhat for a reason, maybe you mouthed off at them, you're still a victim of violence, even if you initiated a conflict. But victimization says, it's never my fault. It's always society's fault. It's always my spouse's fault. It's always the police's fault. It's always the government's fault. It's always. And the danger about this is we never take responsibility for our role in a conflict. So for instance, there are times when I say sorry in a conflict, and in my mind and my heart, as I understand the conflict, I only feel about 10 or 15% responsible for the conflict. Yeah. And I say, I'm sorry. Why? Then they're going to slap you with guilt for the whole thing. No, you know what usually happens? I go in thinking I'm 10 or 15% responsible. I say, Leroy, I'm really sorry. What I did was very hurtful to you. It could have been very hurtful, what I said. In my mind, I'm thinking, it's just a joke. But on the other hand, I shouldn't have told that joke on Leroy. That wasn't the right thing to do. So maybe my temperament, he is very sensitive, let's say, and so he's partially responsible. I've never heard a person come back with, yeah, that's right, yeah. No, you know what they do? They go, wow, I didn't expect you to do that. It wasn't as big of a deal. I made it a big deal. You didn't come to me, but then the next day you came, and now you're telling me you're sorry. I'm sorry for reacting to you, because when you made that comment, I told somebody else about your comment, and I spread word around that you were a mean person. And usually the person gossiping causes more damage around the community than me doing the joke, let's say, possibly. But I still say I'm sorry, and usually it turns around the other person saying, well, thank you for your humility, and you know what, I kind of had a part in this too. Now, you wouldn't do it in a courtroom, but in real life, in the body of Christ, we do this. We take responsibility for our 10%, or 50%. And by the way, you might find out it was you're really 80%, by the way. It may just be your lack of self-awareness, but victimization. So, James 5:16 says, therefore confess your false sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. So we say sorry to one another because we have negatively impacted them. We acknowledge that I'm not just a victim of you, you've been victimized by me. So I need to own my part. I need to own my part, whatever part it was. So if you're not familiar with family system theory, I know enough to make me dangerous, but family systems theory says each one of us has a role in a family unit. Our church is a family system. I don't know if you know that. Each couple, each individual, each family functions together. We each play a role. Every family, every marriage or relationship unit has a system, a way of relating to one another. So it may be hard to do this in 30 seconds, but there might be an angry person, and that's the role that they play in their family. There may be a victim person. Let's just say the husband was the angry abuser. Let's say the wife was the victim, or the submissive one who doesn't ever call the police on the abuser. Let's say the daughter is the good kid, always gets good grades and stays out of trouble. So mommy and daddy think that's the good kid. And then there's the bad kid. a kid that just can't handle the conflict of the home. So they're always getting into trouble. And the teachers and the social workers go, I kind of have an idea of what's going on in that family. Because kid shows up at school, I kind of get a picture of what's going on. Teachers doesn't think, oh, that's the naughty kid. They think, hey, I wonder what's going on. I wonder what the rest of the story is with that child. Why are they so angry? Why are they lashing out at people? Why do they seem so hurt and withdrawn? Social workers and teachers look for those things. Those are clues. So there's a family system, and we have to decide if we're going to let ourselves fall into default roles within our family systems. See, confessing our faults to one another means, even if I'm not the biggest negative contributor to my family or to my church, I do have a role. Am I the builder-upper? Am I the dragger-downer? Am I the one who speaks highly of people? Am I the one who gossips? Am I the one who serves when an opportunity comes along? Or am I the one who avoids opportunity to serve? We all play roles. And we have to decide to take responsibility for our role and know that we can change our role. We can be better than we are, each one of us. Third cultural influence that makes it hard for us to love one another is individualism. Individualism says, my story matters most, so I don't really care about yours. My story matters most. That's what I talked about earlier, where I talk too much about me, or every story you tell me, oh, I got a story about me. Because my story matters most. Right? So if I have a hard time, it doesn't make me feel better to know that you had a hard time one time. I want you to know that I have a hard time. I want some sympathy here. Right? That's partly individualism. So Philippians 2:4 says, look to the interests of one another. In other words, we exist as a unit, a collective group of people called the body of Christ. And Romans 12 says each one of us plays a role in the body of Christ. Each one of us are important members. Many places you're members of one another. You're members of the body. You love one another. You care for one another. All the 50 plus one another's relate to the fact that we are not individuals living in a vacuum or on an island somewhere. Everything about you and everything about me, we impact each other. But we live in a culture that's did you know that North America is the most individualistic culture on the planet? We're nowhere near a large percentage of the world's population, by the way. India has 1/7 of the world's population. China has 1/7. So we're not a very big fish, but we are very entitled and very individualistic. Now, I want to explain a little bit. The next slide says traits of an individualistic culture. Now, there are positive and negatives to individualism, and there's positive and negatives to collectivism. So, notice individualistic cultures tend to emphasize self-sufficiency, right? As Albertans, we especially like this one, right? We're self-made people, we've worked hard, we're farmers, we work in oil, and we're hardworking people. We're pioneers. We're also independent. Now, theoretically, of course, when your tractor breaks down and the neighbor has something you need, and also you're not, suddenly you're interdependent. But generally, we value independence. Autonomy. I can do it alone. I'm the hero. Who was that man? That was the hero. That was me. And then there's uniqueness. We're unique. I'm different than you. Hey, you wear that, but I wear this. Right? And so that's a trait of individualistic culture. Now, we may not even recognize this because it's where we live. This is the fish this is the water we swim in. So traits of a collectivist culture. So this would be all of Asia, most of Africa. Okay, so East, South Asia, Africa. Most warm climates actually have this collectivistic culture. Oh, well, that would mean the Bible was written into collectivist culture by a collectivist Hebrew rabbi and his followers, and 2 collectivist culture people in the Middle East. Did you know that? The Bible was written from and to, soaked in collectivist culture. We read it as an individual, but it's not its native territory. So, this is hard to read, so I'll read it out loud. Collectivist cultures. Social rules focus on promoting selflessness. Working as a group is what's important. Doing what's best for the group, society. And families and communities have a central role. So we are interdependent, and it really, really matters. Now, there are values, there are positives to both, and there are challenges in both. But where we land, and the negative side of where we land in individuals or culture, is that we look to our own interests. So, I'm more interested in how I'm negatively impacted than I care about how I impact the group. Those are some examples. So these are three things at work. These are to make you aware that, you notice I'm not saying you're this, you're that, you're this. I'm saying we have a third problem here. It's not you, it's not me, it's out here. There's a strategy to how I framed this. And I'm saying these things are at work. These forces are at work in your life, in my life, in our collective life. And so when Jesus says love one another, it's countercultural to those things. Victimization, individualism, and entitlement. So loving one another is hard. Saying thank you, I'm sorry, and tell me more go against our culture and its norms. This is why it's hard to love one another. So I want to challenge you with this, and we'll go deeper into each one separately in the next few weeks. How often do I say and mean, thank you? I actually want to do this. No, I won't do this. Take this home with you. Take this home and say, I wonder when the last time was somebody said thank you to me in a very genuine way that left me with the sense that, wow, I'm loved by that person and they acknowledge what I've done for them. It's so nice to be thanked. Think of that warm feeling you got. Why did it feel so good? And who was it? And by the way, if you haven't had one of these experiences recently, find some new people to hang out with who are a bit more thankful, because you need some of that. But secondly, ask yourself, when was the last time I genuinely thanked somebody for something? You ever gone through that? You go to a conference or you hear a sermon and you go home and you write a thank. I did that. I remember writing a letter to a teacher. I was a terrible student. I was a jerk. I was in junior high, and I wrote to my teacher a few years later, I'm so sorry I was such a jerk in your classes and school. And I could have written a letter to every kid in my junior high just to say what a jerk I was. But in other words, do something about it. How often do I hear myself saying I'm sorry? How often do you hear somebody else apologizing to you? And then, when was the last time I told somebody or said, tell me more? Or somebody did that for me. So if somebody did that for you, think about what it felt like for somebody to invite you to tell them more. And think, wow, that was a good feeling. And you ever gone away? I don't think they told me anything about themselves. Honey, did they tell us? No. They just asked us questions about us. Oh, that's strange. Well, that's quite something. All they wanted to do is know about us. That feels really special, doesn't it? Next time we have coffee, let's ask them about their lives. We want them to feel special. How often do we say and mean these three things as expressions of loving one another? Then, what are my words and attitudes telling me about my heart? If you're not hearing yourself say sorry regularly, and I mean weekly, if you think you're not doing things for which you need to apologize on a weekly basis, you need to ask your spouse or people around you. You're not going to get through a week without needing to say and mean I'm sorry to someone. Unless you're a saint I've never met, or you're a much, much better person than I am. I can't go through a week without having the reason to say I'm sorry. How about thank you? How often does thank you come out of your mouth? And if it's not coming out of your mouth, what's going on here? Am I entitled? Am I victimized somehow? Right? And if I'm not asking people to tell me more, what is that saying about me? Am I more interested in myself than others? Because Jesus said, think about others. Love others. And I'm loving myself. And which of our culture's attitudes have I unknowingly adopted? Let's just say you didn't invent this stuff. Let's say it's our culture's fault. And they're coming in on you. Which one of these do you think might be creeping into your life? I deserve it. It's not my fault. My story matters most. These are for your own benefit to take home. And then our next step. Let's bow in prayer. Just before Greg comes and leads us. I'll read it and then I'll pray it. Jesus, we hear you calling us away from our culture's attitudes, its postures, and its words into a new way of showing your love with genuine and loving words that build people up and point people up. Let's pray. Jesus, we hear you calling us away from our culture's attitudes, postures, and words into a new way of showing your love with genuine and loving words that build people up and point others up. In your precious name, we know we can't do this without you, Jesus. Would you abide in us as we abide in you? Would you empower us as the source of all that we need? We can't do it, but Christ, you can. And you will, in and through us. We can't love this way. We can't overcome these negative influences of our culture. But you can. In us, we can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. In your name we ask.